afternoon. Nope. Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? Hope you're enjoying your day. Who here has heard of coalition interoperability? I am totally kidding. Obviously, we've all seen some really terrific presentations and exercises today and yesterday, and we'll see some tomorrow, about coalition interoperability and all of the various vectors and segments that go into creating solutions for this problem set. Today, we're going to be taking a look at that from the role of the system integrator. And on behalf of SRC and all of our amazing partners, we're very happy to present for you today. So what we hope to accomplish in this presentation is to outline the objectives that we've sort of assigned to this particular problem set. We're going to talk about who we are, the challenge areas that we think are most central to our integration challenge areas, the team approach, which is extraordinarily important, and we'll get to that in a moment. And then, of course, we'll do a little bit of proof of concept, because if you don't have past performance in this area, if you haven't done it before, it makes it extraordinarily difficult to talk about how you're going to tackle the problems of the future. So, additionally, we want to make sure that we understand the solutions for coalition interoperability. We'll go back to defining that a little bit. Second, we're going to demonstrate our understanding of the interoperability challenges and how system integration is key. Most importantly, we're going to highlight the benefits of why we do this together. Today, you will not hear a sales pitch. You will hear a story about companies coming together to solve a problem that is universal and so important and critical for us to come together to solve, and we will only do that collectively. And then finally, we're going to establish a foundation to provide solutions, not only for today, but we're going to really take a strong look at what this looks like down the road, because if you don't plan for that in advance, then you're not going to succeed. So we have a lovely group of presenters that is going to come up right now. Brandon Lester, I'd like to bring him to the stage, and he's going to talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Margot. Aloha, everybody. So I'm the Vice President of Security Engineering at SRC, and what I wanted to sidebar for a moment is thanking everybody here for joining this presentation on behalf of SRC, but also, more importantly, joining the conference, coming to Hawaii for those of you that flew across the ocean. We really appreciate it from the AFCEA Hawaii chapter perspective, AFCEA International. I'm also the Vice President of Industry for Young AFCEANs here in Hawaii, and it's a proud moment to be here on the stage where we have a lot of great keynotes and bringing a collective group of folks together just to hear some of the ideas that we have to put out to the community. So on behalf of all those collective groups, thanks for coming out. So I want to tell a quick story, this Who We Are slide. You see a lot of great technology partners up here. SRC as a system integrator really strives to bring together best-of-breed technologies, but in this case, we're trying to meet specific use cases. We had the opportunity to present at the Coalition Interoperability Forum in April, which had 3 distinct challenges, and then another Coalition Interoperability Forum now this week, which started off on Monday with some closed-door review boards. We really enjoyed having an opportunity to bring a team together for that specific purpose, and I think speaking to the idea of the forum, speaking to the idea of an opportunity to bring in a community of folks from different areas, different problem sets, and different solution sets is really what afforded us the chance. So, as an example, AFCEA, as a part of our team today, presented on their own in the spring. StrongKey, as a part of our team today, was a part of our team in spring and got to present on their own in the spring. So the whole premise of this collective team is a culmination of incremental progress. And to me, the idea of these forums coming together is really critical. So this slide is really kind of the starting point of what a system integrator's job is, and framing the problem set is the next piece where I think I want to take a moment up front to let all of our technology partners come up, introduce themselves, tell you how each of their technologies kind of operates in an independent state, and then we'll come back and I'll talk about putting those things together. But first I'll start from a system integrator perspective. So SRC is a small business based in Maryland. I am here on Oahu, and our past experiences really kind of came together when I read the initial problem sets, because I saw partner nations, cybersecurity, identity, cloud needs. That's really our company's history. So when I saw it was almost a dream come true. I can't think I would read an RFP or a specific set of requirements and think, wow, this is great. But it really worked out this time for me, at least. So what we have done in the past is a lot of cybersecurity engineering, and really our niche bread and butter comes down to things like cross-domain. But in this particular venue, that story is ultimately how do you put together different technologies, COTS, GOTS, or whatever you have to work with, and make it actually provide mission value to that customer. So more recently, I'm not going to read the bullets off to you, but we've gone forward into a lot of the the modern big needs for what the Department of Defense and other intel community customers need. At this point, I'm going to hand off the mic to Mark Fox from AWS, talk a little bit about what AWS has done lately.
Brandon, thank you. I have a problem standing up on the stage, so I just need to walk around and engage a little bit, give you guys some background. As Brandon mentioned, this is the second go-round that we've done this. I think most of the folks in the room, over half of you, I think I probably know personally or have briefed at one point in time. But if you think of sort of building a cake here to solve this coalition interoperability challenge, starting from the bottom of that, there is an assumption pretty safe that whatever gets rolled out here is going to be a cloud environment. A little bit of background before I get into the graphic here. I think most of you know Amazon Web Services, largest cloud computing platform in the world. I think more importantly, as we look at the world that we operate in the government and the .mil domain, a significantly larger customer base than sort of all others that are out there today, deployed in theater, doing things everywhere from public portals through ERP systems, HR systems, logistics systems, and now moving into really the partner domain here as a platform for the coalition interoperability piece. Without giving a full background on commercial cloud computing, I'm going to make the assumption that most folks already understand that. What's being proposed here as part of the hosting solution for this is the Amazon commercial cloud platform. I make that distinction specifically. And what you see here is a snapshot of the footprint that AWS has in the AOR. To look up here at a high level, your big orange circles are what we refer to as an Amazon region. These are clusters of data centers across a geographic area, for example, Seoul, Tokyo, Sydney, et cetera. They are not a data center. All of these, except for, I think, Osaka, have a minimum of 3 zones, and inside those zones are a minimum of 1, and in many cases, many more data centers within there. You also see down here a number of edge network locations below, and you'll see the next graphic, if we want to go to that in a second here, that shows this infrastructure being connected together. My opinion is as important as a traditional cloud infrastructure, modern day data centers delivered in a cloud model, is the global network that connects all these together. So those lines that you see connecting the orange dots, which are the regions, is the Amazon Global Network. And what you see is that is a 100 gig redundant high-speed network, and you see it very heavily located within the AOR here. So part of the solution that we would be proposing is how do, for example, the 36 members of this coalition connect to get on that network and leverage the other partners here from an identity access, privileged access, all the way up through potential solutions to be able to collaborate on top of this infrastructure here. So anything else, Brandon, I want to pull out, call? Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Next, I'd like to introduce Arshad Noor from StrongKey.
I think I'll just follow his example and stay on the floor here. Thank you. So StrongKey is an 18-year-old company based out of Silicon Valley. One of the things that we realized almost 2 decades ago is, after all, computers exist for collecting data, processing data, and storing data. So it behooves that we focus on protecting data first. Networks allow for data to move around from resource to resource, but protecting the network is difficult today. It's going to become impossible tomorrow, simply because as billions of devices get connected to the network, it is going to become extraordinarily difficult to keep predators off the network. The attackers are in your network sometimes, even as you're building them. So given that, how do you protect the data, recognizing that an attacker may be on your network? There is only one technology that I have personally come across, in over 30 years of working in information technology, public key cryptography. It is the only technology that gives you a first line of defense and a last line of defense. What does that mean? When you have a resource, a computer resource with sensitive data, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you are giving only the right and authorized individual access to the data. How do you do it? You do it through public key cryptography using strong authentication. We've been using PKI for 20 years, but today we are transitioning to something called FIDO2. FIDO Alliance is a nonprofit standards group. They define protocols, and we've been a member for the last 5 years, and that technology is baked into our solutions. Once you have the right individual within the computer application that's protecting the data, how do you enable that last line of defense? Encryption, tokenization, and hardware-backed key management. And that is what we all assembled together using industry standards in an appliance-based solution so that the data remains protected even if the attacker is on the network. And that's what we're bringing to the table for this particular integration solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashad. And just kind of framing all these pieces together, I'll bring it back when we get to a couple slides in, but ultimately, each of these technologies plays a role in the bigger picture, the cybersecurity piece, the cloud piece, and ultimately, the progress from where US INDOPACOM's mission capability is now will continue to march down a path where we have a lot of new technologies integrated. So next, I'd like to introduce Ross Johnson from Thycotic.
Thanks, Brandon. I know most of you in here. So I'm Ross Johnson with Thycotic. We're a Washington, D.C. based U.S. company, and we cover a lot of different areas of Department of Defense, the IC, Fed civilian, and then we probably have around 10,000 customers globally on the commercial side. A pretty good mix, a very vertical market segment that's out there. The company's been around for approximately 15 years. Our main core product, which is privileged account management, which we're working with SRC on around the coalition effort, it's about 13 years old, so a very mature and baked product on what we're doing. Kind of the main thing we do is the control, access, and reporting all around your privileged accounts, all your powerful accounts. It can also be non-human accounts, you know, things that the systems and the machines are leveraging, and to put all the different controls and password strength requirements around that and really automate everything in there and the whole risk reduction around that whole effort around it. Just as a philosophy as a company, it is set up to be easy to integrate our solution into other components that other corporations may have or federal government agencies. So we like to kind of pride ourselves on that we pretty much work with everybody out there. We got a real open interface and just how you can customize reports, things like that. It's just throughout our company, it's built by IT folks, and it's, you know, out there to easy to leverage. Some of the key things here, I'm not going to go through everything on the slide. I'll keep mine pretty short. It's pretty simple, but you know, the vaulting of the different aspects, the passwords, and it's not just passwords that we cover. When we call something a secret, I'll catch heck sometimes on DoD world because our product's called Secret Server. So a lot of people are like, oh, can we talk about it? You know, things like that. So they think it's some kind of clear deal, but it's not. We just happen to have that name, which is sometimes problematic. But we can store, you know, SSH keys, PKI keys, anything that you need to put controls around to check in, check out. They can even be door access keys, you know, just physical things like that, that someone takes a picture of a code and they need to share that and put controls around it. So it's real flexible in that capacity. Again, around our effort around the coalition is that, you know, working with the Oktas and the Radiant Logics and AWS and StrongKey and everybody else is to be a part of the administration aspect to all that and put controls around it and let the other partner nations be able to control their administrative components of how they're going to come into the overall effort. And I guess, Brandon, I don't want to steal your thunder, but that's the area you cover. So thank you.
Thanks, Ross. I came from Dr. Spia's talk next door the previous hour, and for anyone that got to catch that, I'm sure you enjoyed it. My takeaway, although it's not novel here, this stuff is complicated, right? There are a lot of pieces that go together, and the reason we continue to bring in more technology partners to talk about their specific niche is there are important pieces that no one has solved completely, and we're looking to bring the best technologies, the best of breed solution to build a comprehensive approach for any customer, and in this case, we're specifically focused on US Indo-PACOM problem sets. So I'd like to introduce Andrew Welchel to talk about Okta and another set of technologies.
I'll do the walking around thing too. Thank you, Brandon. And much to what Brandon talked about, there are lots of interesting things about Okta, but the key thing that we're really looking at and discussing here is really the applicability and the relevance for the mission, the coalition interoperability mission that's applicable to Indo-PACOM. So to quickly describe Okta from a perspective of who we are and what we do, if you remember a few quick things, it's identity as a service, things you used to have to install servers, do things like that. That's all in the cloud. And then the other part of that is it's FedRAMP accredited, have other accreditations from a cloud perspective as well. And really consistent to a theme of a lot of other things. Mark talked about how you got the layers of a cake to kind of fit within the model of a cloud delivery. Okta runs on top of AWS, right? And on top of that, Okta secures, and we'll talk more about the specific components about what we're doing with Secure VDI later. But in addition to running on top of AWS, we can actually secure those services inside things like AWS. So actually the pieces of Okta that enable that, we'll talk more about how some of these things you see here interoperate, but really 5 key services, universal directory, single sign-on, lifecycle management, adaptive MFA, and API access management. And really, when you think about the part that I find exciting about what we're able to help participate and contribute to the mission here is I think about what Indo-PACOM is doing and the concepts of, I think about what Admiral Davis has talked about, ensuring freedom of the seas, freedom of navigation, and even power projection from an Indo-PACOM mission. The part that I find exciting on this is an opportunity to actually power project the capabilities of Okta in this joint solution and really enable the mission from a Indo-PACOM perspective for coalition operability. So, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. And again, we're 20 minutes in this presentation, and I think it's really important to hear directly from some of these technology partners because the value brought by each of them comes together in a culminating solution. So last but not least, I want to introduce Esteban Soto to talk a little bit about Radiant Logic and the style of solution that they provide.
Hi, my name is Esteban. I am a solutions architect for Radiant. Really quick about Radiant, we're a software company and we specialize in identity integration. With some of our customers that have implemented an interoperable environment where you have multiple partners that are sharing data, one of the key challenges that some of our customers have seen is the aggregation and correlation of to and from all of the different coalition partners in and out of the enterprise, the actual identities. So when some of these challenges come up, we need to look at technologies outside of your traditional Active Directory and your databases. And that's what Radiant Logic brings to the table. What we bring to the architecture is a next generation distributed directory services that is built on top of virtualization, and big data. And these technologies together enable you to connect to really anywhere you have identity data, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we do it, but enables the enterprise to connect to all of the different partners where there's all the partners where all the identities live, bring it into the enterprise, and then make it available to enterprise services like Okta, like Thycotic, like any type of access management solution. So we'll talk a little bit more later about how we're actually doing it, but at a high level, we're bringing all those identities into a single hub, if you will, for the enterprise. Thank you.
Thanks, Esteban. So for those of you that have not followed the problem set from April, I wanted to just recap where the initial coalition interoperability challenges started, where they are today, and then that leads into where they go in the future, I think. So this spring, US IndoPACOM in conjunction with AFCEA held the first forum over at Fort Shafter in April. And these 3 challenges listed were very open-ended in my mind, right? You understand the desire to improve that interoperability, and it's there by definition, but specifically, how do you do that? Okay, talk about what shared international standards you might be using, and then specifically step 1, we're not going to share data until we know who each other are. So look at that identity and access management piece. The challenges this fall, I think, build directly on top of that. And we were looking forward to this series of challenges even back in April. So federated coalition information sharing, specifically within a multi-cloud environment. Secure VDI in the cloud, a very specific, perfect use case. Okay, how are people going to get to these systems and that shared data? And then the multinational cloud cybersecurity. It's a mouthful, but it's the definition of what we're all forced to address going forward. Every one of these systems, whether it is a thin client or a full-blown snowball edge, has to be cybersecurity conscious, because everything from here on out, data sharing, identity, and specifically within this coalition environment will be suspect to a lot of attention, and if it's not secure, it will get popped. So in this particular case, we put together a new kind of use case solution set focused on the 3 recent challenges from this fall. So we could do an entire talk on a previous slide. But for now, the last time we talked in the spring, the solution was built on AWS, Strong Key, and Thycotic. While we add in new technologies like Okta and Radiant Logic, it lets us kind of broaden that problem set we're going after. For now, I'll just speak in generalities until the slides come back up, but we're looking at, a lot of the same technologies people have been talking about quite a bit. Zero trust architecture. How do you use that to our advantage? The identity and the ICAM piece. Being able to take a series of problem sets and actually use identity so that it benefits us in conjunction with something like zero trust. And then ultimately, how do we take those things up to the cloud in the smart, secure way? And we're looking at proof of concept styles that let us show, okay, we can do this in an unclassified capacity, we can do this in an open environment. Get buy-in from the partners, get buy-in from everybody that needs to understand just how we're going to fix a problem set that's been around for many, many, many years, and make forward progress, get some forward momentum so that this data sharing can proceed. Tagging back on a couple of these bullets, the secure virtual desktops is a key, I think, going forward, especially because there's a lot of virtual desktop usage now, and that's not going to change anytime soon. And as I mentioned before, the cybersecurity piece, going full scope and bringing everything together. So the specific piece for why system integration is important for me is you have to be able to build a team that's going to work together. You have to build a team where the right technology is in the right place at the right time. And in this case, we really looked at how to do that from the specific problem sets, but also focus on the mission outcomes, always focus on the mission outcomes, right? New technology, I'm an engineer, sure, I'll put it in there because it's really cool, but it's not going to do any good if it's not actually supporting the mission. So the really functional driven requirements are, how am I going to meet the goals and actually deal with the challenges that US INDOPACOM or any customer is dealing with. In this particular case, just kind of reiterating the highlights where we were talking before, these problem sets require the multinational and multi-cloud style solution. So AWS is, a great candidate for that global infrastructure that we're looking for. Okta and Radiant Logic pair really nicely together. And from an identity component, the ability to federate through Radiant Logic and use Okta. On the next couple slides, you'll see a diagram, and I came up with a metaphor. I'm not gonna stake claim on it today, but if you repeat it, definitely make sure you give some of us attribution going forward. I think this is the eye chart that makes no sense until you actually just hear the story, right? So these technologies coming together, lots of lines, lots of diagrams and diagonals and dots. The whole point here is you consider the multinational coalition interoperability problem set and really just simplify it down to a bunch of people that need to come together, and different families, different parties, different groups. This is a party. So from the top left corner, mission partner A, mission partner B, mission partner C, consider that a wedding party we're going to invite different people to. And we need to bring all those names together, and we're going to build a guest list. The guest list is served by Radiant Logic and the Radiant One product. So you get all those attributes. You might get them by mail, you might get it by text, get it by email. All these different little attributes come together, but you have your own master guest list you're taking care of. We're going to start our wedding party today, and now we're inviting everybody in. Okta serves as that bouncer, right? You have the guest list, someone comes in, Okta checks, okay, good, you belong here, okay, good. And that, in a super simple sense, is the style solution we're trying to put together and be able to wrap our heads around. So there's a lot of pieces within that. I have no desire to explain any of them today. In fact, I was talking to Ben earlier, and he mentioned, hey, these are supposed to be interactive sessions, so do some talking back and forth, right? I have these slides. You can yell questions at me. I might answer it, I might not, I don't know. But if you really want to have questions that tie into some of these solutions, come up afterwards, or even just come up and grab the mic, depending, I might give it to you. So I want to hand off the mic back to Esteban for a minute and talk a little bit about how that idea of the guest list comes together, how things are built, and then we'll continue down.
So just to follow the analogy, Radiant Logic is responsible for creating the guest list, or if you will, putting together all the identities that are going to participate in the enterprise services to share information across all of the coalition partners. So at its basis, like I said earlier, Radiant Logic it has a directory service that is built on top of big virtualization and big data. So if you look at the screen here, on the left side of your screen, you have all of the different places where Radiant can extract identities from. We support a variety of protocols like LDAP, SQL, REST, SCIM, other web services. But essentially, Radiant Logic virtualizes these identities and provides a way to correlate and aggregate this identity to then serve them up to the enterprise. To the right of your screen, you see all of the different potential partners that might want to participate in this enterprise sharing services. So one of the tough things that as interoperable environment, it's going to be hard to talk to your coalition partners and say, hey, we need to connect to your Active Directory, or we need to connect to your database where you have identities, right? That's going to be really tough to do. So what Radiant Logic provides here is an ability to, instead of telling your coalition partners, hey, give me a copy of your data, you can give them a mechanism of where say, hey, here is a software that runs on a local server, or can run on the cloud, or it could run on your laptop, if you will. And you can install it in your environment, and through clicks of buttons, you can actually connect to your enterprise directory, like Active Directory or a database, and you can click and choose what identities and what type of attributes you want to push or publish to the enterprise services. So if you think about it here, if you have 3 different environments to the right, everybody has a version of Radiant, and they're pushing to the enterprise the identities and attributes they want. The master identity in the middle, the master Radiant at the enterprise will correlate, aggregate all these different identities that are being pushed or published to the enterprise service, and then make it available to the enterprise services like Okta, Thycotic, StrongKey, some of the different applications in the environment. One of the things that I want to also touch on is our ability to do bidirectional replication to tactical environments. So this is something that we are doing in the Navy, and one of the things that is today in production at Royal Caribbean is the need to have a turnkey solution for environments that have low connectivity to the internet or might lose connectivity. So with the Radiant logic, you can install Radiant in a tactical environment. Think about like a AWS Snowball Edge, for instance, and the enterprise Radiant can replicate the identities to that tactical environment and cache it at that local environment. So if you lose connectivity to the mainland, that tactical edge environment still has all the identities, has all the access management pieces that it needs to function. When the connection is restored, so think about the Royal Caribbean or the Navy use case where they come back to shore, the service has a out-of-the-box way to then sync back, all of the changes that might have happened while the ship or the tactical team was on a mission. So at a high level, Radiant, again, brings all the identities together to the enterprise in a way where it's secure, it is fast, and it's agile to the rest of the components within the enterprise. So, thank you.
Thanks, Esteban. And taking that cloud federation component forward to the next challenge, I want to bring Andrew up to talk a little bit about what a secure VDI solution looks like, how it's successfully usable within a Citrix environment, Amazon Workspace environment, and how Okta plays a role in that.
Thank you, Brandon. So as was kind of alluded to before, you have the analogy of the party, the bouncers, but we didn't really talk about what's happening inside the party. You could think about what's happening inside the party as your applications, right? Because why go to the party if you can't party inside the party? So really that's what we're talking about here is partying inside the party. You got the guest list. We talk about zero trust sometimes. Well, if you think about the bouncer, if you give the bouncer your ID, probably it's not a fake ID, but it might be a fake ID, but hopefully it's real. But the bouncer might also look over you, like say, yeah, what time did I see you? Did I already say you come inside? So all those things factor into that analogy, but to actually talk about, we're talking about the mission use case, to kind of go back to that specific element. So Brandon did a really good reference to the fact that really the mission comes first and the mission outcomes. So to that effect, from an Okta perspective, there's 2 things we really talk about, you could say 3, that will really come in our conversations that I think is applicable to mission delivery is speed, agility, and security. So from that aspect, really it plays well that we're operating on Amazon. It makes us do very, very agile and fast. And if you look at what we're kind of drawing from the background, when we talk about speed and agility, we're talking about the ability to do 2 things. One, to very quickly move to get users to get access to the applications. And then 2, as the organization changes, if you think about a joint coalition environment, obviously you're talking about spinning stuff up, spinning down, episodic, ongoing. So now not only if it's an ongoing mission activity, that nature of that activity might change. So you need to adapt to that activity. So if you look at this over on the left-hand side, one of the key thematic elements of this is we're really separating the concept of authentication to application access. So you see things on the left, really the mission is to get the users from the left to the right, do it secure, do it fast, and do it agile. So we're taking the users from the left, we're establishing authentication session, and then we're taking data from Radiant Logic, letting that be the party list to say, hey, are you on the party list? But not only are you on the party list, what are the attributes that are on your invitation, right? If you're coming to the party list and say, well, hey, I'm invited to this part of the party. Maybe you're part of the pre-party function, et cetera, right? Well, in that case, then I'm going to assign you to this enclave. If you're part of this part of your invitation, I'm going to redirect you to this other enclave, right? So these start to map out to real mission outcome related activities. And when we talk about agile, right, you may have different types of coalition operations. You may have one that is really driven by a workspaces opportunity, right? You've got different types of partners, mission partners that would be adaptable to that API-driven capability. But then you may have others that really going to be driven by some integration of a Citrix, and you've got others that may have both. So from an agility and a speed perspective, you've really now got the ability to drive the policy that matches what they're bringing with them from their collection of attributes, and then also then drive that to the right sets of applications as you're driving to the applications, the party within the party, you could say. So, as Brandon mentioned, as questions come up, you can rip the mic from us, but, oh, great transition. So, it sped forward fast. We're talking about the party within the party, but you got different kind of parties. Maybe the party has a partylet, you could say, kind of the party detachments from the party. So in this case, if you think about what's happening from in the DIL environment, idea from the DIL environment is at some point, it's going to kind of separate from the rest of the cloud, right? And all of a sudden now, you need to have some kind of functionality that will be consistent in user experience, still deliver though, however, the ability to get access to the applications that you need, do it fast, do it secure, and have a repeatable delivery mechanism. So what we're describing here is really that same form of agile, secure capability where you have a same user experience where someone attempts to log in, and we're describing a way that you can log in. There's a validation to see is Okta as a primary service available. If it's not, that's okay. We'll go to a local service, return that, come back, get them to the level of access, and then next time if Okta is available, great, we'll hand it off. And I'll go ahead and hand it to okay. But so the thing I kind of mentioned here is as you execute through it, keep in mind, no matter what happens, you've got access to the same sets of resources. And the other thing I highlight, no matter whether you're using Okta as your primary authentication service or whether you're going to the other service, CFS in this case, you're still leveraging that same party list, the same attributes that you're bringing with you through the Fed ID that's going to be leveraged to get access to the workspaces, even in the DIL environment. So, thank you, Brayden.
Thanks, Andrew. So zooming back out, no more diagrams, I promise. We're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity pillars and how that affects everything going forward. So if you're familiar with some of the NIST standards and models, how they map to the cloud, these are the 5 big groupings of what you need to do in cybersecurity. And there are many, many tools out there that help you, map it, also help you take the opportunity to see what specific technologies help you either achieve those goals or monitor and detect when something goes wrong in that space. And ultimately, there are an insane number of partners within Amazon, for example. There's some native services. There are third-party vendor tools that let you achieve all these things. And cybersecurity is fundamentally a component with all of it. So specifically, let's talk about when you're trying to scale some of those data solutions. How do you control where your data is, where it's stored, how you track it? There are a lot of tools, and they all kind of converge at one point. In this particular case, we're looking at data-based protections. If you're familiar with some of the other projects that other COCOMs are achieving, there's a project down at CENTCOM where they're looking at data and attribute-based controls. So we start with identity here, and you've got folks down at CENTCOM looking at specific attribute pieces. You can bring those together and build a comprehensive solution as everything moves forward. The benefit of doing those kind of things in combination is you start to see the risk mitigations and the ability to reduce what you're actually dealing with. The continuous monitoring piece is critical. So for anyone that has dealt with a SIM before, right, you have I think they call it death by alert. If you're used to seeing them pop up over and over and over and over, that fatigue just gets you. So how do you let the cloud or let one of these tools help you there? There's a lot of thought that has to go into that. So in the rest of the slides, to me, these are kind of the key components of what a system integrator is supposed to do and achieve. You have to understand the problem set to be able to put together the right idea and the right mindset. So these particular features and benefits might work for this use case, but as a system integrator, the role is, can I analyze the problem, identify the pain points, and actually solve those, actually spend time to mitigate the risk and relieve the pressures on what the mission outcomes actually need you to do. So let's just use the scale and speed of delivery as an example. I'm not gonna go into all the benefits of cloud, but it's pretty obvious to me that the ability, as Dr. Spira mentioned next door, if you're trying to spin up a new enclave and set of systems in support of an episodic problem, you are all going to have the ability in the cloud to do that nearly instantly. And that is a solution that we haven't had in the past. Going down the line, all these considerations, whether it's securing the data, secure access, costs, these pieces really fundamentally come back to how are you going to solve those problems. And we're at the start of this next generation of solutions. And the piece going forward is, how do you consider what those features and benefits come together as? So one of the requirements when we presented earlier this week was tell us how you're going to get this solution accredited, how you're going to release it out to partners. Do we know if it's mature or not? And ultimately, that integration piece. So what we're thinking going forward is a lot of these technologies are used many places, but none of them have been fully put together, certainly not for the Indo-Pacific region. So the integration piece is going to start with a proof of concept. And some of the simplicity behind it I'll get to afterwards, but it's really incremental progress. Start as straightforwardly as possible, and then add, build, test it, validate that it works, and continue that cycle. From a risk perspective, I think if you've been to any of Joe's talks through the week, there's always risk considerations, and our job as practitioners, whether it's in the cybersecurity field, project management, program management, whatever it is, everything comes back to risk mitigation. And it's really boring on paper, but it's really important if you don't do it right. And the reliability of service piece here, envisioning, we come up with this great new solution, you put it out in the field, and you have an episodic issue come up, and then the solution doesn't work. Well, that's pretty bad, right? So how do you do everything you can to be redundant, to actually build a solution so that even if you have one failure here and then another problem over there, you can still get the desired mission outcome? From partner buy-in perspective, I have a personal kind of interest in this piece because I've spent time working with partner nations where you understand if you just push a solution on somebody, no one's going to want to do it, even if they love it. It's not their solution. So how do you get interest from partner nations? How do you get buy-in from a collective community of people? Hey, this is a project we're working on together. And that goes for anything, right? You could call that coalition interoperability, or you could call that team building around the corner at McDonald's. If you're not working together on a particular problem set, then the solution doesn't really feel like a team solution. The collaboration needs are given. Within interoperability, you need to be able to bring the different partners and all those tools and technologies together. And then ultimately, the infrastructure and security and accessibility are all critical as things go forward. So the whole goal behind starting with a proof of concept, A, is lower risk for everybody. You're not cutting a $10 million RFP without any oomph behind the solution, whether it's going to work or not. The proof of concept lets us start to build that trust. Doesn't matter whether you're looking at it from a DevSecOps perspective and you just want to get something going fast, or if you're hoping to build a solution today and then go back and evaluate it and reiterate. The foundation and the trust up front is the only way this will ever succeed going forward. Demonstrating that enterprise cloud deployment piece is, I think, a benefit that you only really get as an aha moment when you see it happen. If you have infrastructure as code and you click go, and then 30 machines pop out the other side a couple minutes later and they're already pre-built, configured to operate together, and you're on your way, it certainly beats where we were 1, 2, 5, 10 years ago. The specific piece for the DIL environment and the edge capability is really a newer problem that we want to envision as part of the solve in conjunction with the consistent connectivity problem. So how do you build an architecture? How do you build a solution that meets both of those needs at the same time? You're not doing one architecture here and a different solution over there. And then that last piece, how do you mature this incrementally? How do you continue to validate, hey, we're going to make sure this works, we're going to get it better, and we are going to continue down the line and say, okay, this specific solution worked here, but we need to fix it. We need to tweak over here. And on that note, I know we have about 13 minutes for questions, but I will fully acknowledge up front, I'm leaving on the dot, and I would love everyone to join over in the women's leadership panel. Starts at 3 o'clock in the other building, and I'll plug it again at the end. But for now, thank you, mahalo very much, and we'll open the floor for questions. Anything for any of our technology partners? Anything for Geoff Blum? Sorry, go ahead. I'll back the slides up.
So everyone can hear. Yep, great question. And so, yeah, if you can show the slide too. So what we're really articulating here is, and I want to say it's obvious, but it's somewhat probably a little easier to understand how Okta might support security BI, whatever the apps are, if it's think of like say from the enterprise versus a DIL, right? Because you've got consistent connectivity. And the other thing I kind of break down in DIL is like disconnected, intermittent, low bandwidth, right? And sometimes when we get into the details, we're talking to customers, when you're dealing with low bandwidth, that's something you can kind of manage with Okta. There's some things that are manageable in that aspect. When you get into disconnected, it's literally quite disconnected. If it's intermittent, it's kind of iffier in a gray area. But what we really were envisioning, something, a solution envelope, you could say, that would address all those with a consistent user experience. So to address that, one of the interesting pretext around that is in order to deliver the integration to workspaces as well at the same time, we actually have a small, easily deployable app that goes along with this enclave, so to speak. And so basically what's happening is inside that app, there's essentially an availability check. And then if the check comes out positive, it routes to a particular OIDC endpoint to Okta. If the point comes out with a negative fail, it does a redirect to the CFS. And so that directory existing in the local app to the Radiant Logic side. So, and so that flows operating on the portal app that the user is experiencing. And it's done in a way so that it's a consistent experience no matter whether on the enterprise or on the DIL, but the plumbing is done in such a way that they can have a reliable response regardless. Now the thing, and I'll hand it up to Esteban from an attribute distribution, the other thing that's consistent and important to know is that before you go off from that DIL and you're separated, you're going to have that that data set available regardless. And Okta's, no matter what happens, you're going to need that data set to execute the rest of the secure VDI as well. So.
Yeah, so the only thing I want to add to that, so in the low intermittent, there's a way where Okta can work. In a disconnected, because of Okta as a cloud service, it's not going to work. I think he was trying to dance onto that. Yeah, exactly. So the check here is the Radiant has a out-of-the-box lightweight single sign-on portion that will work with the Okta. So as part of the check, in the environment when there's no access to the internet, the single sign-on will be done locally through a federation tool that Radiant Logic has. So this is the architecture that's today at the Navy, whereas Okta is doing all enterprise where there is connectivity and intermittent connectivity, but anything that's disconnected, the solution set has the answer in regards to a local single sign-on solution that can work together in a disconnected environment. So as a whole, we have an answer for that disconnected. Teamwork.
Teamwork, yep, exactly. Partnership, teamwork.
Party. Coalition. Other questions?
Yeah, so I'll answer it two ways. It depends on what app you're hitting. So the most typical way you were going to connect, or you're going to connect to, say, Citrix, that part is dependent on the application. You're going to typically use SAML. If you're hitting the workspaces, you're generally going to be leveraging the OIDC connect portion of it. So the other part that I think is important to note that in both cases, there's a relevance of data that there's partnership on, right? And the relevance is that there's relevant data when it's trying to bring up which enclave someone's associated with or what attributes to pass into the SAML assertion to say, hey, here's a SAML assertion. And on top of that, here's data that's relevant for this joint coalition exercise. What's interesting here is we're able to execute that as kind of the bouncer. The bouncer can pass that data in as they're going through the front door, and then now that application has that and can make use of that when it receives it. So.
Thanks, Andrew.
Did that answer the question?
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brendan. I appreciate it for the one or two people in the room that I don't know. My name is Geoff Blum. I'm president of AFCEA Hawaii, but also helping coordinate the CI Forum. So I want to thank everybody and thank you for obviously all the partners. On behalf of AFCEA Hawaii, we will donate something. I'm not sure what, but AFCEA will do that in your name for Toys for Tots in your name. So we'll do something. But thank you. And then you can spread it out with all their names. No, I don't know. However you do that. I know you said they have the women panel going on. Also for the Coalition Interoperability Forum, we did have the C2VDS session here, but it's going to be in the Honolulu Suites next door, so everybody out and around. So that's where it is over there, and you have time to run across. So thanks, everybody. Oh, one last thing, and I know this question has come up a few times when I was just over in the MPE session. A couple people taking pictures of like every slide, and I'm sure these slides you can see, but if you wanted them, we will post all the slides as long as the presenters approve them, as we did after the first CI Forum. We will send everybody who's registered for CI Forum a link to APAN with how to register and all of that, and then you can get all the slides from all the presentations, only if somebody says they don't want to share them. But I think everyone's told us that we'll share them. So that's what we did last time, and again, we have all your emails. If you registered. If you didn't register and you're just here, which is fine, you need to let us know so we can send you that link, because it's kind of weird to get in and create an account and do that. But it's something that will be helpful and not have to take pictures of every one of these, because there is a lot of good information and all the things that have been going on. So with that said, everybody can run, take 5 minutes to get to the next session. And then don't forget, we have Pauhana on the lawn tonight at 5:30, so It's AFCEA an event. If you should have tickets if you bought them, but it's a good event to go to. So, and you can be outside, and it's warm, and the sun may even be out. All right.